Welcome back. We've covered the first year. We've talked a lot about what we're going to teach. Now let's talk about how we're going to incorporate it into a lesson. And believe me, I know how challenging that can be. But if you can get into a system of doing it a certain way or incorporating it, you will find that it's pretty painless. Now for years, I would start the lesson off with technique because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. And then I would mix it in a little bit and say, well, I'll do it last. But you know how fast that clock works, and before you know it, if you're teaching a 30-minute lesson, it's 3:25, and you realize you have about 4 to 5 minutes to finish up. And your question is, do I teach the last piece, or do I go over and work on their pentascales? Well, I developed something over time that's really helped me, and perhaps it will help you. The first one is, instead of considering that technique is one unit that I do during the lesson, I smatter it throughout the pieces. So my lesson would look something like this. The student walks in and wants to play, let's say, their 3 pieces in their lesson book. I let them do that. Then I say, let's go to the pentascales. I hear the one that they just learned this week, plus the triad and the hand over hand. Then I call on an old one. And the reason I do that is through years of experience. If I leave it and assume they have it, they will forget it. And because I'm not calling on it anymore, I have to keep teaching it and reteaching it because they haven't looked at it. So I rotate the things. There's fun things you can do. You can get a hat and stick all the keys they know in it, and they have to pull out a card, and whatever the card says they do. Or you can just keep track on your little note card of what you asked for. If you asked for G last week, you're going to make sure you ask for D next week. In this way, you're rotating the old material, and like I tell them, once it's in the hat, it stays there. It's there forever. So they have to learn that they learn their new one every week, every day, and then they rotate their old ones, do 1 or 2 of the old ones a day. Now I move on and I do a piece or a book that I think is important next, and then I toss in another technical thing. Maybe I ask for something else. Maybe I ask for the etude book. If it's an older student learning other things, maybe I ask for a chord progression. But the point is, I slit them in between the pieces and just do one thing at a time. By the end of the lesson, they've played scales, they've learned something new, and I've covered at least an arpeggio or I've covered chord progressions. Since I put everything on my computer on a spreadsheet, it's easy for me to put over in the corner, hear arpeggios first next week. And that leads me to know and remember that I didn't hear any arpeggios on the first week of November. So I need to make sure I hear it by the second week of November. This helps incorporate the technique into the lesson without it becoming a separate 10-minute structure. It's easier for them, it's painless, and you get everything done you need. And the students seem to like it. Now there is a downfall, and we all know what that is, and that is after the first of the year, along about February, we hit festival season. And no matter what country you're in or what city you're in, most students are performing a festival, whether it's the National Federation of Music Clubs, Young Artists, Broad Creek Music Festival, all the different festivals, and or for some students, competitions. And what's the first thing that goes is the technique. And I'm as guilty as everyone else. So quite often, I will lose February and March and into April not being as consistent as I should be because we're up against the wire with theory exams and other things, and I find myself running out of time in a lesson. The answer to that is, as soon as you've gotten your last festival done, you get back up on the horse and you pick up where you left off. And that's just the way it is. So I consider my teaching of technique to be from summer to about February, and then March and April are dicey, and then I get back on board certainly by late May, early June. Now let's talk about those golden summer months. Most teachers I know do teach during the summer. Many offer a package of lessons, a certain number. I teach year-round, and that year-round includes 5 summer lessons any way that they can manage them when we are both mutually in town. Since I charge a set fee per quarter, I also tell them if you happen to be in town and you can take 6 or 7 lessons, bravo for you, consider it a bonus, and it'll make up for a day when you are ill and can't come to a lesson. Then everyone is happy because we get a little ahead in the summer. But I start my new year and my new technique routine for each level on the first summer lesson in June. Whenever that happens, I start with my new level. I do not say, oh, bravo, we don't have to worry about this till next March or April or next guild audition or whatever it is you're going to show their technique. I start right then because it is what I call the golden summer months. This is when, without so many distractions, you can teach the next level. So let's use the idea that we have a first-year student who's already now in book 1. They've done their pentascales. First summer lesson, I'm teaching scales. Now, scales stymie students because it seems like there's so much to remember. The big thing is when you cross the thumb or you move the thumb, and they have difficulty, especially when it comes time to putting them together, keeping it straight. Well, now you will see a slide. Really, in the way I teach scales, I teach 3 groups of majors and 3 groups of minors, and that's actually 5 rules, and they have all 24 scales. So I want to share that with you starting today in this first video, and then we will go to the next video and actually do all of them. But let's look at that first slide, which says Group 1 scales, C, G, D, A, and E. Now, you will also find in our next video that Group 1 minor scales are all the white key minors, and guess what? They all have the same fingering rule. Now, let me get to the piano and explain something. Oftentimes, students spend their time worrying about that the technique that they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If they go to 2 octaves, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a lot of numbers. And you wouldn't think that's a big deal until you take the left hand, and that set of numbers does not match the right hand. So therefore, we're asking them to just, by doing it by touch or just feel, that they're going to keep 2 sets of numbers running. And so you get this touchy-feely approach to piano scales that never really settle, and you have students that come in that never really got the fingering down. Well, I'm going to introduce to you in this series of videos the groupings of scales and one principle. There's a basic principle. The 4th finger in each hand plays once in each octave. So the name of the game is to know what that tone is that the 4th finger is playing, and you spot it with your eye. I often talk to students, even very young students. They've seen skaters, and when they go up in the air and they spin and they're doing a triple Lutz, they're spotting a spot in the room or a place on the wall. And that keeps them from getting dizzy, from knowing exactly where they are. So instead of trying to keep a set of running numbers going on in your head, you're going to have a 4th finger. So in Group 1 scales, we're talking majors now, these first 5 scales that you would teach that are incidentally in the circle of fifths. The 4th finger in the right hand is on the 7th tone of the scale. Now this is where we teach our children to think critically. So you'll say you're going to teach C major first, and you say, what is the 7th degree of the scale of C? Well, it's B. By the way, that happens to be the second to the last note, so they can always look at C and go down 1 note, and there it is. Well, if the 4th finger is going to play B, have them put 4th finger on B. Now go down, 1 finger per note. Oh, gee, I'm on my thumb on F. What's going to have to go on E? It can't be 4, because 4 is once each octave. It has to be 3. So what we're trying to get them to learn is the principle of the fingering, why it is the way it is, and they're much more likely. So they're going to spot that B. So they learn to play, here I am, I can't put 4 down on F because it's not the 7th tone of the scale. Thumb. And this is something I incorporate from day 1. So I do 1 octave right hand. What we do with the right hand, we do with the left. The 4th finger is on the 2nd tone of the scale, always in Group 1. So what is that for the key of C? Well, it's D. So when they get to the top, they're not going to cross over with 4, they're going to cross over with 3. Now coming down is where we have the problem. Everybody wants to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's going to happen to you. It happens to me every week, and I say, don't forget, the 4th finger plays D. So it can't be 1, 2, 3, 4. It has to be 1, 2, 3, 1. So what I tend to do is teach C, G, D, A, E. And then I think to myself, gee, I'd really like to start to get things hands together, but it can be a real trial for them to spot those 4th fingers. So a sneaky way to get some hands together and build out for something more involved, in a more involved scale routine, is to go ahead and teach contrary motion first. Now, the sharps and the flats won't come together, but that doesn't seem to bother them as much as the fact is they get to go 1, 2, 3, and the thumb goes under at the same time. So in the case of D major, yes, here's C sharp and here's F sharp, so they have to spot the black key, but they're going to go 1, 2, 3, shift the thumb. Now I want you to look closely at my hand. This I teach from very early on. Students tend to play right on the edge of the black key. And what does that do when they try to move their thumb over? They want to do this. They want to literally, technically connect the third finger to the thumb. And so what do we have? We have this kick where they're trying to move over to a short finger. If we allow our longer fingers to go on the keys and play into the black keys, I'll say a third of the way. I call it walking into the black key. Then look what happens. D, E, F sharp, I'm right there on the third finger. Now the thumb just slides over into that slot. It's a shift. Now I'm going to walk into that C sharp as well. I'm staying inside these keys, and then when I come here, I'm just shifting over that third finger. I tell them no turn, no twist, no tuck. We don't do any of the T's. Now, if you'll look at that, what that allows us to do is walk into the black keys, and it gives us a secure feeling. What does it do to the rest of the fingers? Well, it puts those fingers inside track. I tell the students to think of the keys as a highway. You're going to be about halfway up on the white keys and about halfway up on the black keys, so you're really playing here, coming down the keys. You're not out here. You're not going to be out here on D with your thumb. You're going to be up inside because we're going to walk in just a little bit, and now my thumb is going to come down. Look how close it is to the black keys. So we're not doing this up and down the keys. We're not going in and out at the same time. We're trying to go this way. So now my thumb is going to come, and it's going to be pretty catty corner to that F sharp. Here we go. I walk into the C sharp, and I come back, and my fingers are all up inside. I say up and snug, in and snug. Now, one of my mentors during my doctoral years was Sophia Rosoff in New York City. I did my dissertation with her. And Sophia was, or I should comfortably say, is the last living student of Abby Whiteside, who made quite the splash in the 1930s and 40s with her book on piano playing. Now, Abby Whiteside was totally against scales, arpeggios, and anything mechanical not because she didn't think that the students shouldn't learn the basic fingering principles and rules of fingering. It's because people played them so unmusically that she figured it'd be better they didn't do it at all than just slam them. We have all heard the student that does, and you want to just say, stop, you're banging on the piano. When we allow them to play like that, as if it doesn't matter, or as we often hear when we do auditions and we hear somebody do a cadence, it's ugly. It's not voiced. That's a waste, because all they're doing is proving they know what notes they're playing and what they're supposed to do maybe with the fingering, but that has no musical connection to the music they're trying to play. And if we don't make a musical connection between the technique that we're teaching and what they're going to do in a piece of Mozart with a scale embedded into one of the phrases, you are out of luck. You're doing two different things that don't come together. So it's vital that from the very beginning we teach the scale with a rise and a fall. You can even be creative. You can say, well, let's play it all staccato, but we're still going to make a musical line. And that's vital. When they're doing their hand-over-hand arpeggios, you can even teach pedal. What a great time to teach pedaling. down and hold for the top and come back. That matches what they're doing in their method books at that point, where they start the pedaling, but they just do a whole piece with one pedal under it to get the idea of what pedaling is. So anytime you can incorporate musical points with the technique, you're there. So by teaching the fourth finger strategy of the basic fingering rule of fourth finger in each octave, you save yourself. Now, in the next video, we're going to be talking about moving through all of the groups of keys, what the fingering is. We're going to investigate the arpeggios and what those fingerings are. Wonderful news, arpeggios only need 3 rules to do them all, and for inversions, you just need to know 2 basic facts and you can play any arpeggio that there is. And that is saving, so it doesn't need to be complicated. I feel like often our students think that each scale is an entity upon itself and there's no relationship to anything else. But if we can teach that there are many that are in relationships, you will find in our next video when we cover white key minors that the first group of white key minor scales is all 7 white key minors, and guess what? The fingerings are the same. So if you get this one fingering down, you can do 12 scales. And wouldn't that be wonderful to have a student even be able to go that far? 12 scales, 1 fingering principle, and they've got 12 of them. So I hope you've enjoyed this video today. It's an introduction into this piano series that I'll be doing. And today we covered the first year and just a smattering of what's going to happen as we go into the second year with scales and 1 fingering group. I want to give you an appetizer of what all these scale fingerings are going to be, which we're going to be doing with slides in video number 2, so you will have them all. And by then, I believe I will have a mechanism for you to download the fingering rules so that you can use them with your students in the studio and give them their own copy of the fingering rules and use them as a basis. If you like the way this is working with the fingering rules, you can use this as the core of your curriculum for scales, and it will guide you along the way by using the groups and just how long it will take you to go through each group of scales and how you're going to coordinate that with your arpeggios and your etudes and your different ways that we can work with chords, cadences, and inversions of chords. So thank you for looking at my video today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will look at our second video that's coming up shortly. Have a great afternoon and happy teaching this week.